Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 246. So pretty eventful episode in the sense that two major things happened. Otherwise, the episode I don't think progressed the plot all that much, but it did something big that I think at least has changed the dynamic of the arc, the tone of the arc, and it feels like the stakes are now pretty high. They've killed off two notable characters here, and now it feels like, okay, in the battles going forward, we are probably going to see some life and death battles coming up, and I think it makes those big fights at the end all the more exciting, knowing that Kagura died during this arc, and the characters kind of want revenge for that. Tenma has died, so that family has sort of lost one of their family members, and so that means both sides have reason to fight even harder going forward. That's good, because that's fundamentally what this episode accomplished. Otherwise, Chojuro is still not... Chojuro and the main son of the Fanado clan still not engaging each other, and in fact he's doing a tactical retreat. We're still here at the village, still wanting to defend this from Seiren's lieutenant, Funamoshi, or whatever his name is. So we have been sort of stuck here a little bit for the past few episodes. But the big event obviously has to be the death of Kagura. They fully committed to it in this episode. I think the discussion from last time out was basically, are they actually going to commit to this or not? And my thoughts on it were that I think they could probably go either way, but that it might be a little bit of a stretch to find some way to heal such a devastating wound. The fact that he was impaled through the back, through the stomach, giant wound, effectively hole in his chest. You need something very, very big, serious to heal something like that. So unless they were going to commit to doing something wild, in that I think Jogon, which they have really lent away from since the early Boruto episodes and the Karma Mark stuff has been introduced, they weren't going to do that. But yeah, they the way they did it was that they had Iwabe and Sarada try to heal him, but it become clear that they can't move him because the wound is so bad. They can't. They have no other way to administer medical ninjutsu here. They have kind of heavy Chigo who's able to sew things up, but obviously it's a sword wound straight through his body. So there's only so much she can do. Their healing, they're obviously only beginner healings, enough for kind of basic wounds. So it's clear he was dying, and so he gets his final speech. He hands over the sort of it's called a petition to the village to, in his opinion, allow them to be released following the mission. So that arc feels like it's come full circle, and it felt like, okay, so they're committing to killing off Kagura, and it feels like he is passing on his mission, his destiny in a way, to these three characters. That's been the point of this arc, is showing those characters have their faith and trust in him, the trust that they couldn't have in their former leader, but they can in him. He has now, in a way, died for them, for the mission, further showing them the way, while also, putting his neck out for them the entire time. This is full commitment in that they linger on, I suppose, the emotion of Heavy Chigo more than the others, because she was the one who kind of was the least trustful of Kagura in terms of going ahead with the deal to kind of get them freed. So that feels like they've actually done a decent job at that. Now, the question is obviously going to be, was it kind of worth it, in a way, killing off one of your better anime-only characters? In that, I don't think I'm the only one who felt that this character was going to be destined to be the next Mizukage. That's the way he was set up. He has Chojiro's sword. He's a friend of Boruto from a previous arc. You know, he's one of the main characters, of course. This is a pretty significant death that you could probably only otherwise do with the initial group of 10, 12 characters from the main series. So of the anime only characters, this feels like one of the bigger ones you can do. And it was definitely, felt because suddenly this really obvious path for the future of like, here's a future Kage, gone already. So that's monumental because it does shift the arcs of the likes of Bunta and Hebichigo and Kyoho. My guess on where they're going with this is that when they get back to the village, they will be pardoned, they will be allowed to go free, but they will choose to stay in the mist and effectively continue on Kagura's legacy. And I think they're maybe going to build up Buntan to be the next Mizukage in Kagura's place. Now, I think there's a few things they need to do to build up to that. They probably need to have her use the Chojuro sword, I think. Otherwise, you probably have to give it back to Chojuro, but then how much of an involvement are the other Kage going to have in this arc? They did show her lightning blades get kind of washed away. I'm assuming she got them back though. But I think what they might end up doing is have her in the fight. Maybe the lightning blades aren't quite working. Switch over to that one, and that will be the big moment for Buntan, fully taking on that destiny of Kagura. And then I guess Hebichigo and Kyoho might be her kind of right hand men, kind of backing her up on that pathway. Or they'll actually set them up to maybe have more arcs of their own in or around the village in some way. Not really sure. In the sense that like there is that slight hint of a Metal Hebichigo kind of relationship thing. I don't think they'd really commit to doing anything where like she decides to go live in the Leaf Village or anything like that this early. So I think whatever way this gets resolved, it will be those characters back in the mist taking on Kagura's role. Now, will they go as far as to sort of do something with regards to them being the wardens of the prison? That would feel a little weird, given that they're just released from prison, but they're doing the role in the prison. Not sure about that, but some sort of a role alongside Chojuro, I think, would be somewhat decent to do. The only thing that I think is a slight negative about Kagura'S death is, I suppose, just the nature of how it happened. The fact that he was effectively killed by, the second in command of one of the main kind of villains, in a situation where he just used the full scope of his abilities to block this guy's attack. He was tired and left out on his own, and then helplessly was just killed. There's just a slight sense of like, I think everyone views him as being one of the more significant anime-only characters, that probably should have been Amari himself, or Amari's like main son, his oldest son. That probably should have been the way that they went with this to make it like super, super significant. I'm assuming Funamoshi is going to be killed at some point going forward. I'm guessing Buntan or Hebichigo will be the ones to take him out in the next fight, because he's obviously kind of wounded here from the Boruto Rasengan, but that's one of the big things that happens here, is that Boruto's emotion at the death of Kagura causes him to use the karma mark, and it does get explained later on. We effectively get the explanation that we get quite a few manga chapters, like after what the last manga chapter happens. We'd have pretty much almost like a full arc before we get around to this explanation if we just directly adapted the manga. So we're bringing this up a little bit earlier, which I think is good, just to highlight that, okay, the medicine's working. It allows Boruto control over what level of powers he does have, but obviously everyone is suspicious of it because it's a unknown power to a certain degree. But still, he activates it, you see his speed is increased, but he delivers what seems to just be a relatively normal Rasengan. to Funamoshi, which more or less takes him out of the action for now, but he will recover, he'll come back, and I'm assuming they kind of have to kill him off in the upcoming battle. But yeah, it's easy to forget that there is a lot more going on in this arc. Like, we haven't come back to Ikada in a while. He was referenced in this episode, but again, we haven't come back to that in a while. What's Seiren's condition? Because obviously Funamoshi's fighting as hard as he is because he thinks she won't recover, or like she's going to be permanently injured for the rest of her life. Maybe that is the case, because they did show the replay in a way of the Kagura taking her out, and it was a pretty, aggressive wound, but, who knows what way they're going with that. So that was nice. It wasn't treated as, I suppose, being too big of a moment, because they just had to have a quick thing where, like, a character can overpower the villains to cause them to retreat, so we can actually have the emotional last words of Kagura, and in that sense it worked exactly the way it needed to. The other thing in the episode was the stalemate out at sea is broken. Chojuro is holding station, Amari's oldest son is holding station. Tenma actually decides that he wants to attack. We get kind of the full backstory for Tenma here, but also Tenma's death as he charges into battle. It's simple but effective, I think, backstory, just highlighting that he was more or less abandoned by this village. No one really cared for him. He had to scavenge for food. The villagers sort of beat him and never really cared about him. The Fanato come to the village. They defeat the village. And Tenma attacks Amari, is immediately defeated, but then says, "Take me with you, I want to become strong." Amari likes this sort of ambition, and so takes him on as his son. And we just get this sort of montage through his training where his eldest son more or less trains Tenma, highlighting the argument sort of between the two, leading to his eventual death. But just highlighting that his entire arc is about proving himself to his father, and he thinks that by going out on his own, ending this stalemate, in his mind, winning the battle now would finally earn him his father's approval. But obviously he dies because Chojuro was prepared for this. He was like, I'm willing to be patient here. You attack me, and we can ambush you on my ship. And that's exactly what happens. His men get defeated. He takes some wounds very early on in the battle. We don't really see much of it, but it's clear that as the battle goes on, he just continues to take more and more wounds. He has a last attempt to kill Chojuro, but Chojuro just basically, it's just a block slash Tenma falls off the back of the ship. Dead? Question mark, I guess. Yes. They did the full backstory thing right before the character went to his death. I don't think he's coming back, or if he is coming back, he'll do one thing and then die. That's at least my take on it. That this character will at least die if he isn't dead already. Again, with Kagura, they confirmed it 100% by showing his grave and the fact that he's been buried. Here, we don't see him not come up, so there's always that sense for they could do something there. But I think the fact that his ship sinks, the general reaction from other characters seems to be that he's dead, covered in wounds, into the ocean. We needed to sort of get rid of a few characters ahead of what's going on, because with Kagura out of the way, that's obviously one fight that kind of can't happen anymore, so there's a need to, I suppose, eliminate one character on each side ahead of the big battles. The main aftermath of the death of Kagura is that we need to assign a new overall captain of this kind of combined Leaf and Mist squad. It was pretty obvious, and they ultimately settle on, yes, Sarada is going to be this leader. She doesn't think she can live up to Kagura's leadership, but she's going to try. We, I suppose, know she can, but the question is going to be, is her kind of grief over the loss of Kagura going to get in the way? Can she do it? But we in general think that she can. So, yeah, the big thing here is, okay, what are we doing next? It seems like there's going to be another attack on the village. I'm guessing we'll get the full attack plan from Amari and his eldest son on Chojuro, and we'll begin to set up the final battle type stuff. But again, there's the whole Ikada stuff. I'm guessing we're going to have scenes with Ikada and Amari. Addressing the whole, was it water dragon god powers? I forget the details of it because it was a few episodes ago. I assume they'll bring it up again. So his mysterious powers, which seem to be the most powerful, but also most uncontrollable of all of them. And the fact that, again, he is now in this weird position where he's kind of Boruto's friend, but he's also now more allied with the Fanato. So that reveal is going to need to come out. And then, yeah, like I said, I'm assuming they will set up either Buntan or Hebichigo to be the key character to continue on what Kagura is about. So yeah, interesting episode. They did something quite big here. I hope they can pull it off. I hope they can make this work so these other characters feel like they're of the same quality as Kagura going forward. Otherwise, it might feel like we got rid of one of our better new characters for not as much effect. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. That's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.